Do we have any?
Yes, Chair. I've got Councillor Barry, Fletcher, Cornwall, Beach and Baxter. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other apologies?
Councillor Windley, Chair.
Councillor Hancock's just said Councillor Windley, it's now Councillor Dale.
Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Chair. Same as last time, Cupid, Emmons, Elliott and Rennick.
Thank you. These are recorded by the clerk. Declarations of interest. Thank you. That leads on to our second item, declarations of interest. Members are requested to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other interests not already on the register of interests, in any item on the agenda and withdraw from the meeting at the appropriate time. Do we have any declarations on the agenda on item 8?
Up to.
Chair. Sorry, I think it's gone wonky again. Yes, in relation to 8, the motion, I'm not declaring an interest in it. I have paid my £40 for the extra green bin, but I don't regard it as pecuniary or any other form of interest, but I'm making a disclosure. Thank you.
Thank you. I shall have to declare an interest on the item as a sitting trustee for the land. So I shall be leaving the room and Vice Chair will take over to the end of the meeting. That's the last thing on the agenda. Item 3, commitment to the armed forces community. I would like to go to our next item which will demonstrate the commitment which we have all to the armed forces community. To do this, the Council's Armed Forces Champion, Councillor Fawcett, will now re-sign the Armed Forces Covenant. But before he does this, he would like to give us a short presentation to highlight just how important the commitment to the Armed Forces community is. Councillor Fawcett.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can everyone hear me okay with the microphone? I can't hear it too well. Thank you very much. For those that don't know me, my name is Councillor Stuart Fawcett. After the last election and the new administration, I was appointed to the post of Armed Forces Champion for the District Council. I consider this quite a privilege as a veteran to serve in this role. So thank you, Councillor Barker, for enabling me to do this, and to every member in this room who's enabled me to do so, because I really do consider it a privilege to be able to carry it out. But first of all, I'm going to start with some thank yous, and I've sort of had a bit of permission to name some names, because I'm eternally grateful for the support of the officers that have enabled me to really get this role going. First of all, to Steve. Steve Lee is part of a dynamic trio that jumped in to help when I'd literally just taken on this role. And sadly, Ulrich, a member of the Buddy group in Chesterfield, passed away. Some may not remember Ulrich himself, but probably his bulldog that came here at the Armed Forces event last year. And when his family needed help dealing with issues after his passing, Steve jumped into action and helped the logistics of getting things sorted. I spoke to his mum afterwards, and she was really grateful for what we did as a council at that really difficult time. And it's Steve that enabled that to happen, so thank you, Steve. Secondly, to Sue Dixon and Sinead Dolan, who have been really supportive and given me lots of cautious words of support in having done it. And all of those things that they have done have been in addition to their duties that they are employed for. So this really is going above and beyond what what they're here to do. So really appreciate that. We are a gold member of the Armed Forces Covenant and the Employer Recognition Scheme, and I think it's only right to highlight Councillor Thacker's work he put into that during his tenure. So it's been quite the challenge really so far in taking this role on to determine what more we can do, because he's already done quite a lot. So initially we decided that we were going to hold a consultation for the armed forces community in North East Derbyshire and Derbyshire more widely. So that included charities that the armed forces and veterans and the armed forces family worked with, we also included the police, Integrated Care Board, and several other stakeholders that come into contact with the armed forces family and veterans. We uncovered a wide range of issues at that consultation, not all that this council are able to deal with because we obviously have a limited scope of what our portfolios are. I'm not going to go into them all in depth, but suffice to say there is a considerable issue with homelessness amongst veterans. And that is often linked to mental health. But the conclusion really is that it's very difficult to address, not least because, and I'm sure all members in this room will likely agree, we don't have a lot of money outside of our statutory spending commitments in order to necessarily react to these requirements. So we've made some changes to our service delivery at point of contact so that people can identify as a veteran easier and that we can signpost them better towards organisations that can help with their needs. And I'm just going to move on to the next slide. Alan has kindly left me in charge of. There we are. And that all came out of that one consultation. So those small changes, again, I'm not going to go into depth, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions if anyone has them. But it's about identifying veterans and making sure that duplication isn't happening with our services and others to make sure that they get what they need according to their needs a lot quicker and a lot more efficiently. To conclude, though, and taking those points on board, our renewed approach to the Armed Forces Covenant and the ethos that we're re-signing this document today under comes down to cooperation and collaboration with other stakeholders in our area. And I'm very pleased today to say that we've strengthened those links, and to such an extent where after we'd initially organised this consultation at the end, there was obviously obligatory tea and sandwiches. People would come up to myself, Sue and Sinead and say, that was great, we really enjoyed that. Don't forget to invite us to the next one. I haven't actually realised at that time there was a next one, but given the demand and how well received it was, especially with what's come out of it, we are looking to hold another one in the future. So it gives me great privilege today to be able to sign this document on behalf of the council, and I would hope that members are reassured that in my role stewarding this particular responsibility, that we are going to continue, as I say, to cooperate and collaborate with all of those charities and other sectors across North East Derbyshire and more widely to ensure that the whole of the Armed Forces family gets the best possible services out of our provision. I'll hand back to the chair now before we sign this document to introduce our visitors here today before we move on to the signing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Fawcett. Now, before you re-sign the convent, I would like to invite the two distinguished visitors to come up to witness this. They are Colonel John Wilson, OBE, who is the Vice Lord Lieutenant of Derbyshire, and Kirsty Parker, Deputy Employee Engagement Director of the East Midland Reserve Forces and Cadets Association. Thank you.
How are you doing? Well,
Okay, yeah, but for my age.
thank you for coming.
It's a great
I had a
pleasure.
feeling. Yes, it's lovely
pleasure.
to meet you. Thank you very much for coming. We'll move on to the signing now, and I'll have a catch up with you.
Okay, yeah, fine, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Okay.
Were you pre-briefed that I was left-handed? Maybe beats army. Don't mention Twitter.
I'd just like to thank you both for attending this important event in the life of the council. You're most welcome. Thank you very much. Would the Vice Lord Lieutenant or Miss Parker, have they gone?
Yeah.
Take you as a no then. My new friend, Mr. Councillor Thacker.
Thank you, Chair. I thought we were old friends, but anyway.
Oh, well, no, we knew now.
Thank you. Can I just say on Councillor Fawcett's presentation, I just want to say thank you for the acknowledgement of work that's gone before. It just reminds me of the time in 2019 when we were looking at the Armed Forces Covenant then and re-signing it at that point. Councillor Barker was very quick to point out that the Labour administration previously had got this council to the bronze stage, and I did acknowledge at that point that we are on a journey. These things can't happen overnight, they have to be a journey. And it was the then Labour administration that actually set the ball rolling with signing the Armed Forces Covenant, and then the following administration then took it further, and we finally recognised with a gold award. But I'm particularly pleased to hear Councillor Fawcett's comments with regard to support for veterans and reservists, but it's easy to attend all the nice events where people are dressed in military uniform, it all looks grand and everybody's seeing nice parades and so on. It's the tough bit behind the scenes. It's the veterans who are in the criminal justice system. It's the veterans who have issues with substance misuse or homeless, as Councillor Fawcett mentioned, and those basically who are struggling with living on Civvy Street. And I know we don't have statutory powers on various issues to do with those elements, and we don't have the money. But there are always clever ways of providing support and doing things like the Buddy Buddy help that we're giving, and other ways that we can perhaps work with Ricknold in a more imaginative way to make sure that support is given appropriately. So I'm just sort of lending my support in any way, shape or form, and I'm hoping that every single person in this chamber will do the same, and of that I'm sure. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Again, McLeod. Would you like to come back and speak? Yeah, thank you.
The answer is yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. We didn't go, you go.
I should do it.
Thank you, Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. It is really a privilege for me to be here today as well, and I was here when this local authority first signed the Armed Forces Covenant, so it is something quite relevant to me. The Armed Forces Covenant, which is enshrined in law, was introduced, I think, 2011, and it aims to ensure, and this is vitally important, the wording in this, it aims to ensure that people in the Armed Forces community are in no way disadvantaged, and that's the key, no way disadvantaged because of their services in the Armed Forces. So it's not to gain advantage, it's not to give them a lift up over any other member of the community, but to make sure they don't have any disadvantage. And it covers all members of the Armed Forces community. So that's regulars, reservists, vitally important part, service leavers, those leaving the Armed Forces, which we call veterans. Reservists particularly can face some problems trying to balance the three responsibilities that they have. They have a family at home, they have a day job, and they serve king and country. And it can be quite a challenge. And for everybody in the community, businesses, local authorities, to have an awareness of that can be very, very important and can be very supportive. A few years ago, the government published a paper called The Armed Forces Covenant, a Guide for Local Authorities. And it recommended a number of things. It recommended that each local authority should have an armed forces community within it, that each local authority should appoint an armed forces champion. You don't need me to tell you that North East Derbyshire District Council did everything in that report recommended by the government. And that's been acknowledged in the Employer Recognition Scheme with a gold award, and it gets no better than that. So it's absolute appropriate recognition that this local authority is doing its bit to raise awareness of and generate support for members of the armed forces community. And on behalf of His Majesty's Lord Lieutenant for Derbyshire, and indeed on behalf of the monarch, I thank you, Chair, and everybody in this council for so doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's it, is she coming up? No.
Item 4. 4 public playground.
Public participation. Just to confirm, colleagues, we have no public questions, so let's move straight on to the next item. Council plan, annual report. We now have the council annual report. Could Lee briefly go through this for us? Lee?
Emphasis on briefly. Yeah, I'm not going to say too much, Chair. You've got the report in front of you, and we've got a video to play in a short while, and these two combined clearly demonstrate our efforts, and both of these set out our collective achievements very well. What I do wish to do, however, is first of all give my sincere thanks to all the officers involved, and also all elected members for what's been, in my own opinion, a really good year. To help underpin our successful delivery of our council plan, this year we've also developed a number of new strategies, some of which are due to be published this week and others soon after. So watch this space later on this week. Really interesting reads, and I know many of you have been involved in their production. These have been inclusively co-designed to include elected members, staff from across the organisation at all levels of authority and seniority, and with the trade unions too. I'm personally really proud of this approach because I know that with that level of ownership and buy-in, we're going to be much better placed to succeed. Of course, it's not always smooth sailing, and we aren't perfect, and there's still loads to deliver and loads to achieve. We know that. However, I'm proud of what I see, whether that's with one-to-ones, with elected members or officers, in team meetings, committees, or even on cold-face meetings with street scene on those cold, wet winter mornings. I see people. I see pride, I see energy, passion, hard work, dedication, and people trying to do their best for each other and for those in our communities. I see people who feel that they belong here and that their input counts. And although there will always be differences and challenges, I see a great organisational culture, and I genuinely do see one team. And it's this that sets us apart from others, and it's this that we should all be proud of. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lee.
Play that video.
No, it's you first.
Councillor Barker,
There we go.
as this is your report, is there anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I thought we were going to do video first, so I missed that first bit off.
Yeah.
But we'll see in that video, seriously, the amount of work that's gone on over this last year. And while we'd like to take credit for all that, that you'll see in a minute, I think it would be churlish if I didn't at least say that we weren't left in a bad place, and we could hit the ground running after last May. I was asked at one of the parish council meetings I went to what difference now after May, and my response was that we're moving the council in a different direction, not least by building and acquiring more social houses for rent. We're also made a commitment to the environment and the community safety teams, and personally I'm a big believer of what it says on page 3 in the report, that is that by working with our communities and partners we can improve the lives of people in this district. As many of you know, I've been going around the parish councils. I've visited, I think, 16 out of the 24. I think you were right, David. I don't know where I got 28 from. That one, I don't know where they're extra 4. But like I've said at those meetings, I fully get the merit of the parish councils. I believe that the parish councillors are the cornerstone of many of our communities, supporting many community groups and activities within that. I'm pleased that Councillor Morley has recognised that, and we're trying to support these groups with his designated charity. But going back to the report, I'm sure that you've noted that there are still some crosses on the summary sheet with each one of the themes, and I'm guessing you might have some questions prepared about these. I think we would have. But whilst some may be easier to answer than others, I'd like to preempt that, really, and suggest that the relevant scrutiny meetings look at these crosses and offer recommendations how we could turn the crosses into ticks and even the ticks into even better results. Because each one of those sections of that pizza, if you like, can be referred back to a different scrutiny committee, which again is something slightly different to what we had before. And again, I can thank all the staff that's helped deliver that, and all the stuff in the report, and all the people that have pulled that together, and the video that you'll see. And again, I'll reiterate what Lee's just said. I'm picking up that pride and passion within the organisation. And I know we keep saying it, Lee, about this one team approach, but it is really embedded now in the council. And again, that was started on the previous administration, but it is really getting embedded. I do feel that we're all pulling in the same direction, and we can achieve stuff. There is a lot in that report, you know, what we're aspiring to, and again I'll say it, we can't do it on our own. We've got to do it with the community and with the partners that can help us do that. I am meeting on Redler Bay. We met with Police Sergeant earlier this week, last week, didn't we? And I've also got other things penciled in for the different bodies, because we need to all work together, because to improve people's lives is easy to say and a lot harder to do. So with that, can we watch the video?
Can we watch the video? Here we go. Any sound?
No, I've gone deaf.
It is a good video.
Can you sing us that theme?
Have to watch it on YouTube after you watch planning meeting.
Just click on that mic and see if it says
Which one?
Can't get the stuff.
Well done.
We're going to slow them words
Well
down.
done, Nigel.
I didn't put it together. You're all right.
Need a mover and a seconder.
Are you going to move it, Nigel? This motion?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, and with that, obviously I'll move the annual report and as it stands. Thank you.
A seconder for that.
Thank you.
It's been seconded, but I'm now opening the floor to members to speak. Remember, you have a maximum of 5 minutes to get your points over. So, have we got anyone? Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Nigel, for the presentation, and particularly to thank officers for their work. Very clear to see from the video and the report how much hard work and dedication has gone into achieving some of these things. And we really do have a good culture in this organisation, a real one-team approach, as Nigel said. So that's great. I'll start with the positives. I always think that's a good idea. So I think it's great to see that there's lots of continuity, things like the community action grants, the social housing decarbonisation fund, and the amount of properties that we are better insulating. And I think that's probably the single biggest thing we can do as a district in terms of climate change at the moment. So great to see that being prioritised. And then some of the UK SPF works like the Kilmarsh Skate Park and the Dronfield Civic Centre investment and parks and play areas and shop fronts. That's really, really good work there. I have to give a bit of balance though, and this ultimately is a report about the performance of the Labour administration in its first year of office. So from my perspective, it would be remiss of me not to highlight some of the sort of bizarre decision making and things that haven't gone so well, because I think this report speaks volumes in some of the things it doesn't say. So we just have to remind ourselves that we've had 38 houses approved on the Greenbelt at Unston, when we then went on to discover that the decision had been based on a completely false justification. We've had the administration saying that it's open, collaborative and transparent, and then proceeding to limit speakers at planning committee meetings, excluding proper political representation from the new local plan working group. And then even today we've had further restrictions on public participation. On planning, we've had the suggestion that the local plan review was urgent, and then the administration then swiftly voted to basically sit on its hands and wait for further government advice. On green bins, we've had the reneging on the cross-party commitment to extend green bin collections over the winter, which was very disappointing, and then obviously introducing charges for second green bins as a first step down a potentially very slippery slope, in my view, having refused to rule out further charges. And on fly tipping, despite some very big words around taking a really tough approach, the administration refused to agree to our calls to increase fines to the new national maximum, citing the impact of the cost of living on the fly tippers themselves as one of the reasons, which was utterly bizarre, if you ask me. In terms of town centre regeneration, the town deal was almost kiboshed by all the messing around we had with the A61 access to the parking, which I'm really pleased was approved last week by Planning Committee eventually. And then on the incubator units, which are supposed to be there to promote and stimulate new businesses, I'm hearing already some concerns around them basically becoming a cash cow because of the extortionate rents that are being proposed there. So really hope that the administration will review that. We seem to have seen a paper go through that drops all of the regeneration priorities in favour of the Avenue South site and a potential to relocate the depot there in an area of already very high traffic. And then we spent 210,000 on this council chamber, and none of the technology seems to work if this meeting's anything to go by. And then we almost agreed to authoritarian demands to ban meat from our leisure centres from our Green councillor colleague, and scrapped car parking improvements that were being made across the district. So there's a long, long list. There's plenty more. I won't go over any more, but all I'll say is it's lovely to see the video and the glossy booklet, but I think the reality doesn't quite match that, I'm afraid. Thank you, Chair.
Anyone else? Councillor Shipman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just want to kind of touch on a few points. Councillor Dale's also touched on them. There's a lot missing. There's a lot missing out of this report in terms of what the council could have been doing. A lot of it's just business as usual stuff and continuing what was done previously. I do think there's a lack of leadership in terms of what this administration is trying to achieve. It's very big on words and what it thinks people want to hear, but when it kind of comes to getting the day job done, I think it's actually officers running the council rather than there being any leadership from the cabinet. And that's quite evident in that, and Councillor Barker's just admitted it earlier, where he's referring to he wants support from the scrutiny committees. They're not. It's not a committee run council. They scrutinise the decision of the cabinet and officers that's coming through. It should be the administration taking the decisions and the leadership, and then the committees looking at those decisions as to whether they are the correct one or not. So I mean. But at least Councillor Barker admits it, and I suppose you have to start with admitting that there's a real issue. And I think the administration is probably working as good as the technology today. But yeah, I just think that there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done that the leadership is completely ignoring. And all I've heard since in the last 12 months is restrictions, limitations, trying to stop residents getting involved in this council, trying to stop councillors actually supporting the administration by coming forward with ideas, because we've put probably 10 motions forward in the last 12 months, and each one the administration's chucked back at us because it's not interested in hearing it. And then the next day, surprise, surprise, it's just thought of the same idea and starts pursuing that, particularly one around app, because I believe it was recruiting an app developer the day after that we had the discussion in this council chamber. And it's stuff like that just makes myself, at least, think, what is the administration trying to achieve? If you want to work with us, I'll happily work with anybody. I don't care what your political colours are or what you believe in. If you want me to help you try and improve the council, then let's have that collaborative approach. Don't just keep saying it and then doing something completely different. So yeah, it's nice to have the lovely presentation about all the good stuff, but I think we need to start working on the things that aren't mentioned in that presentation.
Right, thanks, Councillor Shipman. Councillor Barker, would you like to reply?
Everybody done? No.
Oh, sorry, there's nobody up here. Oh, Martin, Councillor Thacker.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think I get why we have a report published in this way with the infographic and so on, and I think it's good for the public to see things in a straightforward way. I do want to echo the feeling in the council that there is a one-team approach, and that's something that I could see with my own eyes when I came to a couple of staff events, and I was overwhelmed by the feeling that has been generated by the leadership of, I'm talking about officer leadership, in bringing together a real sense of purpose, and that one team ethos is genuinely meant, and from people I talk to, they feel that. So I think that's really important, and if the council is to go on to further success, then you have to tap into what's so positive about the employees that are here. There's lots of things in here that tell us about things that over in 12 months that you've achieved. For me, it's what's not in the report that's also important. For me, the council has agreed to a number of charters, agreements and so on, and there's no detail about the progress of those charters. So, for example, if we talk about the deaf community in North East Derbyshire, we agreed to the BDA charter, and I know that the council is doing some work on that. I see nothing in here that tells me about it. So rather than just focus on the one or two nice to have things or some good things that have happened in 12 months, there's lots of ongoing work that just isn't reflected, and I think that's a pity. And I think for me as well, there's a lot of things that are based around the 4 towns in the district. That's where the population is concentrated, but don't forget, North East Derbyshire is a rural district, and it's very proud of its rural nature because of the villages and all the small communities that are in there. And representing a rural ward, I know people will say to me, it's all right having a skate park in Killamarsh and so on, but what's in it for us where we live in the countryside? And I know you could pick out things like that, but there are other things about protecting the environment, protecting Greenbelt, protecting the wildlife and promoting all of those sorts of things I think are important to put in there that promote why we're such a good rural environment in this district, and it's the jewel in our crown, if you like. So it's what's not in there that you could actually expand upon. So maybe there could be this infographic and the video and so on with the Star Wars thing that's so fast that I can't even read it. But there could be a more mature report that goes behind it with a lot more detail that people might want to look at in scrutiny committee. So I'm not against things going to scrutiny committee, because I don't believe in cabinet approaches to everything. I think sometimes you need to value all the councillors that are elected, and it's our opportunity for us to have our say through scrutiny. So a report with more detail about maybe some of the themes, so that we can actually analyse it and look at what's going well, things that could improve, and things that just need addressing. That's it from me, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thackett. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to add my agreement to what Councillor Ross Shipman said about, well, all of what he said, perhaps apart from the fact that about that the committee made about the officers running the council being a bad thing. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing at all, if that's the case. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Barker.
Thank you. Yeah, that's, I think, I was expecting some of that. I think I'll start off with the scrutiny thing. I actually think, like you've just said, it's a good thing. We want to include people in that journey that we take in, and that's been said today. We are on a journey. We're trying to get there, and if people can look at this in more detail, and I take what you're saying, that there should be probably a better a report behind this, what we do with some of those things, and I fully get the charters and agreements and whether or not we're achieving those. I think that's a fair comment that we can look at. Regarding the officers running the council, I can tell you I'm in here every day, Leanta, nearly every day, and all right, we've got a good relationship, and I talk to all the officers on a regular basis, and hopefully in a mature and a way. So I'd say we're running that council together. And you always flag stuff up through me or through the portfolio holders. We have as much input, and it goes back to that one team. Yeah. And that thing that flashed up with all his faces on. It's about all of us, all pulling in the same direction. And all right, we'll take some of the criticism. I can go through that list, Alex. And I think that green belt, fair enough, we held his hands up. We said that possibly that background information weren't correct. You highlighted it, and we acted on that. Similarly with the local plan, we've had a good look at that, and the advice we're getting is we don't need to do a full review of that yet, but there's still a lot of work going off in background. There's questions on the green bin in a minute, so I'll leave that. And there was a good reason for fly tipping. It wasn't about particularly that. It was just getting the money in, I think, were the problem. And all that other stuff. And regarding the council chamber, I know we've had hiccups, but I were at County Hall on Thursday, and that were equally as crap. That didn't work neither. So I can't say any more than that. But we will get it mended for next time. We will get it mended for next time. So thank you. Well, I have moved and we have seconded that.
We'll now move to the vote on this motion.
Sure.
Are you on show of hands? Do you want it electronically? What do you want, show of hands or electronically? Show of hands then. All in favour?
Just noting it, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's carried. The motion has been approved. Item 6, review of the council's policy under the Licensing Act. It's a review of the council's policy under the Licensing Act 2003. Councillor Pickering, would you like to speak on this?
Thank you, Chair. Is this working? Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. It's a matter of routine, this. The Licensing Act makes it a statutory requirement that every 5 years we review and publish the policy on licensing, so that's taken place. We need to do that because obviously we have the administration and regulation mainly of the sale and supply of alcohol, provision of regulated entertainment and provision of late night refreshment. Policy went out to consultation and unfortunately there was only one response, Chair, and the licensing committee regarded that as indifference to any changes in the policy. So it's been considered by the licensing committee and their recommendations for changes are included in this draft. The summary of those is to ensure that the policy is consistent with legislation and guidance, to increase clarity of the policy, improve standards of premises in the district, provide clarity on the delegation and update on local demographics. So with that, Chair, I'll move the recommendation that Council approves these recommendations from the Licensing and Gambling Acts Committee and that the draft statement of principles under the Licensing Act 2003 be adopted to take effect immediately. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lacey.
Yeah, I was just going to second that, but Councillor Kerry jumped in.
Okay.
Just briefly, as Chair of Licensing, I went through this policy with a fine-tooth comb, and the officers will attest to how rigorous I was with the spelling and misnaming and things, and I second it. It's a great policy.
Right, thank you. I'm opening up the floor now for members to speak. Remember, you have a maximum of 5 minutes to get your points over. Anyone that's coming up? Martin, Councillor Thacker.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad Councillor Lacey went through it with a fine-tooth comb. There is a punctuation error on page 40. But so according to this, it was only consultation with one parish council. But yes, I think from a licensing committee point of view, we did go through it, and the only bit I had, which I questioned at the time, was the list of consultees. The list is exactly the same as was at the time, and I asked that in future that the list be reviewed, and that's the only point I'm making. So I'm happy with where it is now. It's just that we are wanting to make our consultee list more rigorous, and I know it's beyond statutory, but we're wanting to make sure that it can be a gold standard approach to developing this type of policy. Thank you, Chair.
Anyone else? If not, Councillor Perkins, do you wish to exercise your right of reply?
Thank you, Chair. No, I've not got anything really to say to that, but Councillor Thacker, thank you for that. I'll take that on board and we'll look at that in future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are we voting on this then?
Yeah, can you do it by show of hands?
We can do the vote by show of hands on this. All in favour? Carried. The motion has been passed. Yeah, no, that. Item 7, questions. We have 2 questions today. Both are to Jane Barry and both are to the Southern Avenue site. As we have all had a chance to read them, can we go straight to the answers? Question A, Councillor Dale to Councillor Barry, portfolio holder of growth and assets. Over to you, Councillor Barker, in her absence for the answer.
Yeah, I'm not Councillor Barry, as you might have noticed. No, Councillor Barry's not here. She's on a big holiday. But anyway, thanks, Alex, for the question. And I've got to say, I was a bit surprised with it because I'm sure you've read the paper that you've picked that out of, and it does say quite clearly in 4.4 that identifying the avenue as a priority regeneration project does not mean resources will not be used to deliver ongoing schemes such as the Claycross Town Deal, Dronfield Master Plan, or any of the pipeline schemes in 2.1. The prioritisation gives a clear strategic steer to officers and partners. So all we've done is put put that to top of the list, basically. But we've not crossed anything out, and there is a big long list in that report that I'm sure you're aware of, that lists all the other things that we will get round to, as and when we get the resources and the money. So that's where we're at with that one. I'm leaving it at that.
Right. All right, thanks for that. Moving on to question B from council. Sorry. Pardon?
I think
Right,
you
to
can
ask
ask.
a supplementary.
All right. Does you want to ask a supplementary question?
Thanks, Chair. I mean, that's reassuring if everything else isn't being dropped, although it sort of calls into question what priority status means if you're going to carry on doing everything else anyway. But I think one thing I'm particularly interested in behalf of Eckington Parish Council is a lot of work was done in the previous administration around to develop a regeneration plan for Eckington, and clearly there haven't been any more recent Levelling Up fund announcements to bid from. But will the administration commit to continuing to pursue levelling up and regeneration, particularly in Eckington? Because we have a good plan on the table there. It may need a bit of improvement. Obviously we've got to take into feedback on the unsuccessful bid previously. But I'd be really keen to see the administration commit to pursuing that in the future.
Yeah, we have talked about Eckington in a lot of detail, I think, Matt, didn't we? And it's definitely still in the frame. I know we've talked to Claire Ward, the new mayor, on several issues, and Eckington was definitely up there. I know there's issues about ownership of that block, isn't there, where the precinct is, but it's not something that we forgot about. I don't know if Matt, if you want to sort of add anything to where we're at with that.
Pretty much just as outlined by both Councillor Dale and yourself, really, that there are improvements that could be made in terms of a bid. There is complexities in terms of ownership, which was largely why the bid fell down in terms of deliverability, and we will continue to try and progress that as much as possible and prepare for the next round of funding. There's not a lot else to do at this stage, I don't think.
Thank you.
That conclude it, Nigel.
Yes.
Move on to question B from Councillor Baker to Councillor Barry, who was not here, so Nigel, over to you again.
Yeah. It does get confusing, this. Somebody asked me why am I asking myself a question. Because I just keep thinking they miss an hour off of that. No. Anyway, never mind. But again, I'm a bit confused with this one, because it's been in the pipeline, this site, and I think this were on a desk somewhere in offices, the Avenue Area Strategic Framework, and I've got some notes somewhere that says it goes back 20 years, that I think between October 2000, October 2000 and December 2003, there were 3 public consultations took place, and this document goes back to 2013, and this is version 5. So where the site proposals are all set out in detail. The site is also part of the local plan, which were adopted, as you know, 3 or 4 years ago. So all that is in here, and I know the site is earmarked for over 1,000 homes. Obviously quite a lot have been built. 730 are planned for the period up to 2034, which is in the local plan. And my question is, if we don't build them there on the brownfield, do we got to build them somewhere else? And then we're in trouble with them in Killamarsh and Dronfield. So it's one of them jobs. It's earmarked for that, and I can confirm that any development on any proposals will be subject to the normal planning process. I know that's your last bit, your last paragraph or last sentence, and that will include a public consultation. But it is a strategic site, and it has been since they spent how many millions cleaning it up? 180 million cleaning that site up. So I think the government or Homes England or whoever will want to do something with it, which they are doing. and it is a massive site within our district. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Moving on to, you want to follow?
Supplementary question.
It's not come up, has it? Who wants follow up?
Yes, that's Councillor Neil Baker.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Baker. I nearly said Baker, apologise for that.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as a Wigglesworth resident and a representative of Wigglesworth, over recent years there has been an increasing amount of housing all in and around Wigglesworth. The traffic flows through Wigglesworth are getting ever greater and greater and greater, as Wigglesworth is used as a cut-through for people accessing the Derby Road and the development south of Derby Road, and either side of Wigglesworth. So my supplementary question is, can residents of Wigglesworth be assured that a full traffic impact assessment is undertaken before any decision is taken by Cabinet to move this proposal forward, not just for the additional housing and elimination of the roundabout, which was planned before, but it's the bringing of the refuse lorry depot to Mill Lane, which is of particular concern to a number of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nigel.
Thank you. I think that the traffic, they're constantly doing these traffic impact assessments, aren't they? And going back to the previous question, if you read the report about here, end of Mill Lane, it got to do a roundabout we're virtually, because of the, who own it? Who owns that thing? Anyway, it cost a fortune. It would have cost an absolute fortune to acquire the land, and the best solution is traffic lights. And for me, the sooner we get traffic lights on the end of there, before somebody gets killed pulling right, going towards Chesterfield, the better. And regarding the depot, we've not made that decision yet. We're looking at various options. We've got a feasibility study. And again, the sooner that we can move out of Eckington, that's going to flood, keep carrying on flooding whatever we've got climate change, and that's not going to go anywhere fast. So we do need to look at all that. I fully get your thing. We could say the same thing about Claycross and North Wingfield. That's, you know, we've got bywaters up at Claycross that's being built up as we speak, and there's all top of William Thorpe Road. There's again on for 1,000 houses up there. So it's what we've obliged to build these 6,000 odd houses in the local plan era, and they've got to go somewhere, and that's where we're at. So I don't know if one of the officers can reassure on the other stuff, Matt or Lee.
Happy to come in on the traffic stuff. Obviously through the planning process, close to the time. I suppose what's worth stressing is the timing of this report was largely around the new administration, the onset of, or the creation of the Merrill Combined Authority, and understanding when we're in these meetings what the priorities were, and setting out the completion of the Southern Access, which is a historical and strategic priority. I think in the report it's one of the UK's #1 or key brownfield redevelopment sites, and we've got to carry on that journey. It's in the local plan. We need to unlock these things. The traffic impacts will be part of the planning applications that come forward. Is that going to be tomorrow? Is that going to be next year? Probably not. We're on a journey. We're on a journey to secure funding to unlock these things. There is a development site that's in planning at the moment, which is the other part of the Strata Home site, part of the Homes England's land ownership. That will likely come first. So I don't want this to come across as something that's going to be sprung on us as council this time. We don't know what the design of the traffic stuff is at the moment to be able to do the full testing. We're working with Derbyshire County Council and colleagues there in terms of planning these things. This is a long-term regeneration thing. It might be 10 years before the things that are discussed in that report are delivered or delivered anything like, or have been fallen out because they're not deliverable through feasibility or viability, or there's something in the ground. So it's setting the scene. I don't want to set hairs running in the community with that report. Thanks.
Thank you.
That's it.
No one else?
Now we'll move on to motion.
We'll now move on then to item 8, motions. We have one motion today which has been proposed by Councillor Hancock. It is set on the agenda as motion A. Again, we have all had the chance to read it. Would Councillor Hancock like to speak in support of this motion? 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, we've already made mention earlier on to the introduction of the charge for an additional green bin, rather than the word second. I'll be honest, I think it's questionable on multiple levels. There's the ethics, given that this council's actually passed a climate emergency. We're actually penalising the people who we should be thanking, those who actually keep their hedgerows and their trees and their gardens lawned, rather than the ones who are ripping them out and doing that. So we're doing a disservice to our own policy there. I think there's a question of fairness, because the vast majority of people who come to me, in fact all but one, live in council houses. So the idea that this is only affecting residents who live in larger properties and larger homes is a bit of a misnomer. And lastly, which is really what the wording of the motion moves about, and I'm sure over the next few minutes we're going to get a lot of double-speak and mental gymnastics, but this is a change of policy. And under the council's own constitution, a change of policy has to go through cabinet, scrutiny, and back to this council. It's the long-standing policy that additional green bins are granted based on the size of the garden. And now we've got a whole new policy that is anyone can have an additional green bin for an annual fee. Well, that's not been through any of those things at all. So the motion is quite simply to reverse that annual charge, revert to the policy that we already have, and if people actually want to support a policy of charging, then let them have the guts to stand behind the motion and vote for it in here. So that's it from me, Chair.
Thank you. Now we need, are you moving that, Councillor Hancock? Have you got a seconder?
I'll second it, Chair. Totally agree with Councillor Hancock. This is a change of policy, and I know I've spoken with the monitoring officer between the meetings and been quite open that how officers, which is basically what's happened because it's been done under delegated authority, can take a decision to change a policy from going from no charge to a charge and then claim that that's not a change in policy. I just don't understand it. Why have, if any members of this council have wanted to push this through, why have they not had the guts to bring it forward to this council as a motion and send it through the committees and cabinet like the constitution is asking? I think that's what should have been done. It hasn't been done, and I think we need to return the council back to a policy that was in existence 12 months ago, and then should that policy need to change or want to change by this Labour administration, then they should bring it forward and make that case to the rest of us why we should vote for it, and not just kind of push it through back door to try and make it happen. One concerning thing is, and residents have said this to me, is that they feel that by charging for the green bins now, it's just a trial period to eventually charging for all bins in future. And I think that needs to be made clear that it's not the case by this administration. And I think the first thing we can do is return the policy to how it existed, like I say, 12 months ago. So I will be supporting this motion as it stands, and hopefully everyone else in this council chamber will do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. It's gone again then. Richard Councillor Wilton.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'd like to support this motion by the Liberal Democrats. 2 points. First is on the process. There's a diminishing number of district councils now in the country. To remain relevant, and we're one of the few remaining ones, I think we have to be accountable and transparent and inclusive to our residents. That's how we will survive. And in saying that, I'm somebody who's always opposed Vision Derbyshire. I've always opposed the combined mayor. I believe in locality. So on that issue, this was quite an important decision. and it should perhaps have been recognised, the political sensitivity of this locally. So whatever the outcome of that decision, I think it should have been debated in this chamber, whatever the outcome, because, okay, it's not, you could view it's not a big amount, but certainly it's an amount that in my ward is an issue, and it's one in which I've got mailbag on. So I'll deal with that process. The other one is, again, I think I've made these comments before, I see this as a regressive tax through the back door. It is a fear that in addition to quite major increases in council tax, which we're all aware of the pressures, that on top of that, on top of paying your council tax, you're going to be paying for other bin services that most people think should be part of their council tax. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with the motion and I'll be supporting it. Certainly, I mean, I said it at the time, I think the changes to the green bin policies is the start of a bit of a slippery slope. We know that Chesterfield, our neighbours, and the Labour administration's colleagues refuse for all, they charge rather for all green refuse collections. I suspect that's the direction we're going. I think it's a bit of a cash cow, to be honest. I think, as I understand it, there's about £23,500 been generated so far from this. And I don't think, I know that my councillor colleague, Councillor Cupit, requested a business case for it at the last meeting. We've had a 3-paragraph email from Councillor Pickering, which I don't think constitutes a business case, even in being extremely generous to it. And we've also seen the refusal to extend green bin collections over the winter time. So I think this is a really regressive step. And agreeing with the process side of the motion, it's not transparent. It lacks a bit of guts, to be honest, to introduce an unpopular decision via an officer delegation. I think it should have just come to Cabinet, and that would have been my advice if things were different. But yeah, so I'll not be supporting the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
I will be supporting the motion, not be
You
supporting.
will do. Councillor Pickering.
It's been a long day.
What about Heather Liggett?
Thank you, Chair. Well, we're told it's having a massive impact on people, with 74,000 plus properties in this district, and the vast majority of them only use one green bin. For the additional ones, I can tell you we've only been charging since the 1st of April, so it's not been running for 2 months yet. And in that period of time, we've had 739 properties have requested additional bins, and they've requested 776 bins between them. So we've got properties who are having 3 and 4 bins, not just 2. 10% of those are new bin sign-ups. People didn't know that they could do that, and we're having new bin requests all the time coming in for additional green bins. We've only had 2 complaints, official complaints, Chair, since the start of that time. So it seems to be running quite successfully, really, and you know, the sensible residents of North East Derbyshire that realise that they need more green bins to get rid of their waste are actually contracting with us to do that. So it's not the big issue that's trying to be made out here today. And it's terrible, really, that we've got the Tories telling us about we should be providing public services when all local authorities are suffering savage cuts from the Tory government to public service budgets. So how do they think you do that on fresh air? So they cut it on one hand and they want us to do something about it on the other. It's deplorable, Chair, to do that. And in that time, we've been monitoring that. There's been no increase in fly tipping in the last 2 months, and there's been no green waste deposited in black bins. So it's not causing the problem that's trying to be made out here. It's the Lib Dems, I think, making an issue where there really isn't one. And I don't know why they're doing that, political gain or spite or something, but it's mischief making in this council chamber. It's really on their part a miserable ploy to try and change policy or address policy in this council chamber, Chair, and I won't be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Leggett.
Well, I will be supporting this motion. I live in an extremely rural district, and I'm sorry, Councillor Pickering, but the residents that have come to me, I presume you've not had a lot in your inbox because they come into the councillors. because I have. And all the residents that have come to me are in Band B properties. They are not wealthy. They cannot afford to pay the extra money. They're in Band B properties, they're tiny little cottages, but they've got big gardens. And they like to maintain their gardens. Not only do they maintain their gardens, but they maintain outside, on the road, on the roadsides. They grow flowers, they cut the verges themselves. They try to keep the village as tidy and neat as they can. And I disagree, because I can assure you I've seen grass cuttings under hedge bottoms, which is classed as fly tipping. And, well, I'm amazed that you've not had any green waste in your black bin, because I'm afraid I've been doing it, because I've got nowhere else to put it. So I disagree strongly with that, and it is something. You know, I mean, we live miles from a council tip. People haven't got the option. I've had several residents in their 80s phone me from Higham who don't even own cars, so they haven't got the option to go to the tip. And I've also had a complaint about somebody having a bonfire when they've never had a bonfire before. The Environmental Health have been out and warned them about having a bonfire, and he said, well, we've never had to have one before, but now we have to. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Anslock?
Chair.
You're right to reply.
No. Councillor Gillett. Kevin Gillett.
Chair, I wasn't pressing
Councillor
earlier.
Gillett, press button.
Apologies, Chair. I wasn't pressing earlier because it seems to cut the speaker off from the camera. Councillor Pickering has said a lot of what I wanted to say in terms of the merits of this motion and why it should be voted against. So I won't repeat all of that. But what I will just pick up with regards to the motion itself, because I think it's an incredibly badly drafted motion, if I'm honest. It refers to Rule 10.5, but doesn't tell us which Rule 10.5 in the Constitution it's referring to. So my best guess is that it's the Council Procedure Rules. And if I'm right on that, then the motion's quote of the Council Procedure Rules, for example, is wrong. It may have all the right words, but not necessarily in the right order, based on what it says in the Constitution, because it doesn't say that every policy change has to go before a scrutiny committee and cabinet. What that motion says is that any motion that before this council meeting that purports to change policy has to go through that process. Not every executive decision that this authority takes. So I think on that basis it's flawed. Secondly, Chair, it's the two resolves within that motion. I think there's problems with both of them. The first one is saying that it wants to change policy. And the way a council with the strong executive model works, it's not for this council to change policy. It could call on the cabinet to review the policy. That would be perfectly legitimate. But what it can't do is change the policy, and that would be the case even despite the constitutional changes, because the power doesn't lie here on executive matters. It lies either with the cabinet and or any delegated powers given to officers. And then the second aspect of the resolve is to actually ask standards to draft better guidance for officers. Well, I actually find that quite insulting. I think the managing director, the director of legal services, and the director of governance actually know how this council works and how the procedures and the law works for this. And if this hadn't been done in accordance with the proper procedure, they would have been the first to say so. So I think to ask us to issue guidance to those people, I just think is totally and utterly wrong. So I think, Councillor Hancock, you've actually got it round your neck, and I think you should be big enough to accept that you've got this motion round your neck and the procedure within the Constitution and withdraw it. If you're not prepared to do that, then I would agree with Councillor Pickering and encourage people to vote against it.
Thank you. Councillor Weatherall?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I just ask a question about this? So people can request that they have an additional green bin, but people who have a large garden may be granted a second bin free of charge. Is that correct?
That was the old policy.
Right, okay. So the old policy is the free of charge bit has now gone?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Hancock, like to reply?
Thank you, Chair. I will take a couple of these points in issue. I'll actually come back to Councillor Gillett first, because I suggest he reads his own constitution here, because it was his Standards Committee under his regime that changed it. No motions to change council policy can be accepted for debate at council meeting until they have been considered by the relevant scrutiny committee or cabinet. And cabinet. Or if the policy is a regulatory one, such as planning or licensing policy, the change has been considered by the relevant regulatory committee. Now, if he's saying that says something different, he needs to reword it better. So I would suggest that go back to his committee. In terms of Councillor Pickering's comments, I would remind you, Councillor Pickering, it's May. We are only just in spring. We've got the summer to get through, so you're not going to see the peak season of growth. You're not going to see the huge impacts yet in terms of how this is going to impact on fly tipping and additional waste in the black bins. What Councillor Leggett says is exactly right. People are doing it already, so clearly the message isn't coming back to yourselves as yet. I think it is out of touch. As I say, we're penalising the people who are the poorest. It's not necessarily the wealthiest households. And as I say, the whole thing is going against our own climate policies. We're penalising people who are actually growing the things that we want them to grow, who are growing trees, who are growing hedges, which don't compost very easily in the gardens. They take years. And now you're saying that we should be taking them to the tip. Well, that's actually increasing traffic on the roads. So it's a complete and utter slap in the face to everything that's been passed by this council, which we haven't been great on doing our environmental stuff. We're years behind where we should be, and now we're saying let's take it even further behind. So anyone who isn't backing this, I think you really need to take a good hard look at what you're actually... You're singing the right words, but you're just not following the right actions.
Chair, point of order, Chair.
Kevin?
I think Councillor Hancock continues to misinterpret the Constitution. The council procedure rules apply to decisions taken by full council meetings. They don't apply to decisions taken by the executive. They are a different set of rules. If you don't accept my word for it, I don't want to put the Monitoring Officer in a difficult position, but I think she will be able to confirm that.
Right, thank you. We'll now move to the vote. We do it on the elect.
Point of order. Can we please get the confirmation from the Monitoring Officer, thanks, before we go to a vote?
Yeah.
I can't get out of this. Sorry.
Oh, somebody's trying to go. Mayor, Chair? Yeah. Yeah.
What?
Shall I come in? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Oh, it's gone. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, if you look at 10.5 on page 54 of the Constitution you've got, which is the new one, it says exactly as Councillor Gillett said, no motions to change council policy can be accepted for debate at a council meeting until they have been considered by the relevant bodies. It is.
No, I read that. You read that out? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Not what it said.
Got to the vote.
I think there's a misunderstanding from Councillor Pickman and Councillor Hancock for the motion. The motion is what comes here. And that this governs what comes here. It doesn't govern the other matters that the executive decisions taken at a cabinet meeting or by delegated powers. There's a difference.
The stuff from cabinet still comes here as recommendations and motions to council.
No.
I don't want to keep going backwards and forwards with this. I think the simple answer is to go to the vote. Are you okay with that? Yeah. Right, can we go to the vote then?
Just check that everybody's voted.
Has everyone voted? That's all right. Take it as a yes. 43 votes, it's 24 against 16.
The motion fails.
The motion failed. We'll move on. Right. Item 9. I do have some urgent business in the council's capacity as trustees of the Claycross and Dainsmore Recreation Ground Charity. As I explained earlier, We are now going to take the declarations of interest of Deansmore Recreation Ground charity business. Anyone got any? Apart from me. Members are requested to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest and/or interest not already on the register of interest in the item of the agenda and withdraw from the meeting at the appropriate time.
That's you, Chair.
Thanks. We will now move to the exclusion of the public.
Have you declared an interest?
I'm going to declare an interest now, so I shall have to leave. I'll have to hand over to the Vice Chair due to the fact that I'm declaring an interest as a trustee of this land.
Right, I'm here sooner than you thought, Councillor Hancock. I didn't know it at the beginning of the meeting, but I am now. So the next item is to discuss...
Sorry, Chair, no, you need to move exclusion of the public.
Oh, sorry. That the public be excluded from the meeting during the discussion of the following item of business to avoid the disclosure to them of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972, as amended by the Local Government Act 2006. So if there's any member of the public present, could they now leave?
And we'll stop with the streaming.
The stream's empty, Chair.
The stream's